Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener. This is Brett. I am the producer of the Online Great Books podcast. The very first thing that I want to tell you is that as I record this on Wednesday, January 26th, enrollment at Online Great Books will be open for 4 more days. So if you're hearing this on Thursday, that's 3 days you have left. Also, remember, you can always join the VIP waiting list. The website is onlinegreatbooks.com. And you should, I said should, just be on the mailing list for updates as well. So if you are listening right on Thursday as the show is released, because you are that kind of listener, I would say the dearest listener for being so punctual with new shows, you've got about 3 days left of enrollment. Again, the site is onlinegreatbooks.com. And today, Scott and Karl will be journeying into monastic life and discussing the Rule of Saint Benedict, written by Benedict of Nursia in 516. This book has been a basis of the Benedictine tradition for 15 centuries now. So according to the Lindy effect, I am going to forecast that it is here to stay for the next 15 centuries as long as everything outside of the church continues to go so well. All right, this episode is shorter than what is coming next week. Scott and Karl make a transition a little bit before the hour mark, and I decided to end part 1 there. So there is much more of this conversation still on the way. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and thank you for your interest in Online Great Books. We'll see you next week.
I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And Brett has already told you what the show is going to be about. So I just want to say my name and then have Karl say his name so you'll know which voice is which.
That's right.
Yeah.
My voice, however, is a little bit, it is a little bit subpar. Had a little bit of a cold, so I'm gonna sound weird, that's all.
That's scary. Having colds. Like, how will we make it?
Well, in the old days, what happened is that you got a cold, and, maybe you had a fever for a day, and then maybe you felt good for a day, and then you felt bad for a day, and then you were up all night because you had mucus draining down the back of your throat, and you woke up and you sounded like this. But then, after a day or two of that, you'd either die, but probably not, or you'd just get on with it.
Huh.
That's what we used to do.
I've heard of that.
I know it sounds crazy.
You asked me if we were going to, before we turned on the microphones, if we were going to read reviews. And I hadn't even thought of it until you said that. So, yeah. Well, first of all, we're going to cover the Rule of Saint Benedict in English here in a bit. What are we going to read next trip? Is it going to be the Lost in the Cosmos, Walker Percy?
I think that was our plan. Lost in the Cosmos is a lot of fun.
I look forward to it. That'll be good.
Yeah, I'll talk about it more at the end.
Yeah, we'll do that one, and then let's see if we can give some teasers here. We had talked about reading Polyface Micro, the Joel Salatin's new book on homesteading and holistic agriculture, regenerative grazing, and the like. What do you think of that?
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds
good. That's fine. I bought it.
Yeah, that's a good chunk. That'll get us almost to March. Meanwhile, this guy on Reddit, pound on the table, he posted a review. In the review of Online Great Books is conflated with a review of the podcast. And I have told you people on this that listen to this show that Online Great Books isn't the podcast. I don't even lead seminars because I'm not any good at it. I'm too opinionated, and I'm not patient, and I'm not a seminar host. I'm just not cut out for it. It's not the same thing. And he says, quote, "What I really think is that the founders are basically meat-headed mediocrities who like Aristophanes for the fart jokes and the Iliad because it's violent. Joe Rogan wannabes who like to pretend play professor for the ego boost and the money. You can listen to the podcast to see if you agree. It's basically 2 weightlifters from middle America attempting to talk philosophy at each other. Hackneyed takes, logical fallacies, factual inaccuracies, and unbridled ego abound. It's a shame that their personalities affect the rest of OGB, but they do." So I go through that. That's not the whole review. He makes some other reviews.
But wait, there's money in this?
Right. I went through it like point by point and like refuted that chunk there on my blog. It's just so dumb and so tiresome. He basically just doesn't agree with us, and he wants to hang out with coastal people and say all the cool things back and forth to each other and all that.
It is usually the most overtly political people that find us political.
Yeah. Well, I'm political, Online Great Books isn't terribly political, though. It really isn't. Our seminar hosts are not experts, although a couple of you might be. There were a couple of guys that are personal acquaintances of mine. They're friends, and that he doesn't like that. But they're really good at the shared inquiry thing. My good friend Thad is like, hey, guys, he as a seminar host, it's really common for him to say, hey, this 3-page thing here, right in the middle of this Aristotle, I just don't get it. Can you help me? And then the seminar, off they go, and they bring the experience and intellect of everybody in the room to bear on that hard thing, I mean, he doesn't claim to be an expert, and we don't want them. We don't want them. That's not the point of seminar. And he is a personal friend of mine. In fact, he's coming over to the house tonight. So whatever. Yeah, the thing's not perfect, but by golly, I'm proud of it, and I think we do a good job. And this guy's frankly just not welcome there. So that's fine.
Well, the amateur take are the takes that I want. These people wrote these books for you. They didn't write them for the university. There weren't universities then.
No.
For a long time. They didn't write them for people to hair split over the, whatever fine points of logic that they can find. It's to miss the point.
Of course.
That's frustrating to me.
And on top of that, like the Great Courses has worn out all of these books. Go buy the Great Courses thing on the book you're interested in. They do a great job of what they do, but that's not what we do at all. It's just not the same thing.
Well, sure. If you want someone to tell you what to think of a book, there are people that will tell you what to think of the book.
Or I'll even be generous. They'll tell the heck out of you about what they think of it, and then you can take it or leave it. But that's been done to death, and we don't do that. It's a very, I hate the word now, but I'll use it. I think it's a very democratic kind of organization, and there's some risks in that. People's experiences with great books, groups, whether it's us or at their home group, their experiences are really. They're really dependent on the seminar, the group themselves. You've got to really work to make the thing what you want it to be if you are a great books person, whether you do a group in your home or you do a podcast with your buddy Karl. We've got to make this thing right. And the seminar person, right, whatever that means, right? The seminar member has to work to make it the thing they want it to be, that they need it to be, which means they have to bring their questions, bring their problems with their text, bring their confusion to the group and prosecute that,
And you never know where it's going to go. I had a Thucydides seminar last week. I'm forgetting the name. Was it Liz? I can't recall. Brought up this point, and she's reading about Alcibiades, and she can't help but think back to the Republic and the portrayal of cities as sorts of people. Mm. And she's making all sorts of connections between, Athens is Alcibiades writ large, and which is a great thought, and it was really productive of thinking, but it wasn't something that I'd come in thinking at all.
Well, the scholarship doesn't support that, Liz. Whatever.
Yeah, you get surprised in seminars, and then you walk away thinking something that you didn't think before.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't do it right. I'm very proud of that. So if you want to do it right, go get $85,000 and go down there to that school over there, in GTFOH. Get out of here,
Oh, that'll get you through a year and a half, by the way.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, then go do it right. It's going to be awesome.
It's $50,000 a year, I think.
Oh, yeah? Where's that? State U? Is that just kind of what it is?
At my alma mater, the last I checked, no, I think the last I checked, it was $60,000 a year. Room and board and tuition for Zoom classes at a university.
Right.
Wow. If you guys pay us $60,000 each per year, we'll do better.
I don't want a major client like that, because then they'll be like, hey, listen, that thing you said on the show, or your take on this or whatever. Then they'll be like, this guy. Sounds like taking the ticket to me. Well, meanwhile, going to have to read some more of your papist stuff here.
It's civilizational stuff. It's not papist stuff.
What do you mean?
I mean, Western civilization, actually probably all civilization, is monastic.
Oh, whoa. Big claim.
Yeah. But certainly Western civilization is. And by that, I mean you have nerds living together in communities according to rules, figuring things out.
So what you're saying is nerds built civilization?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. That monasteries did, for sure, especially in the West. And so it'd be a good idea to figure out what they are. They are still around, a couple of them. I mean, there's more than a couple, but there are a few that actually do it the old way. And figure out what this instinct is and how it works. And so what we picked is a little book written by a guy named Benedict called The Rule. It's probably a 6th century book. We don't really know very much about Benedict. I'm just pulling this from memory, but he lived in Rome. This is Rome at the end times. This is Rome after the empire has fallen in the West. It's decadent. Within 100 years, there's going to be wolves going through the city. The population is going to fall so much. It's not a great time, and decides that in order for him to be a Christian in the way that he wants to be, he needs to leave town. And so he does. And he goes out and becomes a monk, which means somebody who lives on his own. It just means solitary.
And he was monking before people knew what that was, kind of.
There was a lot of monks in Egypt.
Yeah, there were these desert fathers, but maybe he made monking cool.
Sure, in the West he did. Well, he gave it a particular flavor. So it starts out, monasticism, the big father of monasticism is a guy named Anthony, who lived, I think, in the 300s. He lived 104 years, something like that, lived a long time. He was in church one day, and he heard that line about, sell all you have and come follow me, and so he did. And for him, that meant out in the desert. And he was known to be a holy man, and people would go try to be next to him. And that's when monasteries started, because people wanted to be next to Anthony, and he'd keep moving. So it was kind of a casual thing. But there were also cases of weirdness. Okay, so you already... Well, the English have this expression, enthusiasms. Books from the 18 and 1900s, the early English stuff, he suffered from enthusiasms. He was the sort to go off in the wilderness and set up his own life. And so Anthony was one of these. There was a guy that sticks in my memory. His name is Simeon. Stylites, I don't know. His name means he sat on top of a pillar. Okay? And I read his life story. So you can look up Simeon Stylites. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. September 1st on the old calendar. And what he would do is he climbed on top of a pillar. And he stayed there for 40 years.
So how does that build a civilization?
Well, I don't know that it does. But it's evidence of extreme religiosity. The pillars, I finally saw a picture of this. Before they made Athens touristy, I saw a picture that a friend of mine posted way back when I used to be on Facebook. This is from about 1880 or something. There was a monk who lived on top of a pillar. And what it was the ruins of the old civilization. So the old temples. People would just climb on top of these pillars and live amongst the ruins. And just stay up there and pray all day out in the cold. They're odd people.
Do you think around the base of that pillar was like under like a billboard where the pigeons roost?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he had disciples cleared out. There's a story about Simeon the bishop came up to him because the bishop thought bishops are overseers. That's what the word means. And he wanted to make sure he wasn't, bad crazy. Obviously he was crazy, but he wasn't
right,
bad crazy.
Clearly.
And it says, Simeon, come down. He hadn't been down for 20 years or so. And Simeon stops doing his prostrations, and he climbs down and says, yes, Your Grace? The bishop says, okay, you can go back up.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that he would be obedient and actually come down.
Prostrations.
But you can't really have a community of pillar saints.
Prostrations are like Catholic burpees.
Yeah, it's a spiritual CrossFit.
Oh my God.
So you had people like this, and if it's going to endure, you probably need somebody to come up with some rules, some ways to do it. Because maybe you have a Simeon who's actually holy out there in the wilderness, but maybe you have a villain who's out there pretending to be holy, being like a wizard in the desert. People tend to do this sort of thing. Charlatans will tend to do that. So we have rules. We had rules. Basil wrote a rule. Augustine wrote a rule. There's a few others. And Benedict's rule is the most famous.
Yeah, so if you ever hear somebody say that it's a Benedictine monastery, they follow some version of the Rule of Benedict here. And he died in 547 AD. And like Karl said, we don't know a whole lot about him. So we don't really know when this thing was written. And we really don't know that he died in 547. But that's kind of close. It's kind of close. So that's the beginning of the monastic era. And Karl, you say that this is some civilization building stuff, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. You and I, to a lesser extent, have been engaging in some homesteading activity, some regenerative agriculture. Pretty much all I've done is clear a fence line and ordered some seeds. So regenerative agriculture is a long-term project where you are improving the soil. The soil lives in harmony with the animals that are on it and produces food for the people that tend it. But it takes time.
Oh, man.
It takes patience. It is not extremely profitable in the short term. It may be more profitable in the long term, maybe, but it's not as profitable as dumping petroleum-based fertilizer on your field and growing a bunch of stuff. So it's a long-term project. You may be, this about knocked me over when I was reading my seed catalog and ordering fruit trees. And it says, if you order fruit trees of this particular kind, you may well be planting fruit trees for your grandchildren's grandchildren. That's civilizational stuff, where you plant an orchard and you may never get the fruit. Or if you're going to preserve knowledge, which is one of the big things that the monks did, you're copying down books, not for profit, hoping that someday somebody will read it. Maybe somebody will read it. It's long-term thinking. It doesn't matter if you personally, I don't know, what would your monastic name be?
My monastic name?
Yeah.
Well, all the monks I know just have pedestrian names, like Brother Scott.
Yeah, but I can't think of a Saint Scott.
Oh, well, just wait. I'd just be a choir monk. I'm just going to be,
a lay brother.
Yeah, I'm just Brother Scott. It's fine.
Yeah, so Brother Scott, Brother Scott might work his entire life to drain that field and make it harvestable, but Brother Scott may die before that ever happens. He probably will.
I have a story
and then
about this.
Brother Jacob will show up and probably take up the work and continue it.
Did I tell the story about the stone wall in the Candle for Leibwood show?
Well, tell it again.
I don't like telling them twice, but there is a monastery, a Benedictine monastery that's pretty hardcore, not too far from here. And I go down there and stay with those men from time to time. And the first time I went down there, they put me in a third-floor room, and I had a west-facing window. And I was standing looking out the window, and there was a man, a monk, down there, down on the ground, below the window, next to a giant pile of rocks taller than him. And he would pick up a rock and turn it around and look at it and turn it over with his hand and put it down. And then he would pick up another one. He would turn it over and he'd look at it and he'd put it down. And then he would pick up another one and he would hit it with a hammer a couple times and then fit it to this wall that he was working on that was not knee high yet. It was like 9 feet long and not even knee high. Then he would hit it again, and would, chip a little bit off and then fit it, and then move on and pick up another rock. Well, I go once a year. I go down there once a year. Maybe I'll go twice a year, but I don't go all the time. And I go back down there and look out the window, and that wall is 4.5 feet tall and 21 feet long now. And the pile of rocks is gone, but there's another pile of rock a little farther down. And then I've got...
Well, there's plenty of rocks out there.
There's plenty of rocks. And then I went out there again, and I got out there again. That wall is about 8 feet tall now and goes about halfway around the place. And I was out for a walk one day, and he was out there working, and I said, I've been watching you build this wall for a number of years. What's the overall plan for the wall? And he said, well, we're going to encircle the entire building, and let me show you. And he walked over, and there was a 2x4 frame laying on the ground, kind of an A-frame kind of thing, and he stood it up with some effort. And he says, this will be the profile of the wall. The wall will be 10 feet thick at the base. It's a truncated pyramid, or a truncated triangle section, right? So it's going to be 10 feet tall, wide at the base, something like that, maybe 12 feet wide, very wide at the base, about 10 feet tall with about a 2.5 to 3 foot wide flat spot on top. I said, when do you think that'll be done? He says, oh, I don't know. There you go. Guys.
Doesn't matter.
How thousands of tons.
I remember visiting a Carmelite monastery in Germany, and they don't follow the Rule of Saint Benedict. They have their own thing. Father Michael Linson was the prior or the abbot. I was studying there. They had an archive there that I was studying in. And I remember one of the first things he did was he gave me a tour around the town, and he showed me the cathedral. This is in Würzburg, Germany. And that was nice. And then he showed me all of their rooms and everything. He brought me down to the basement and showed me all the graves of all the friars. And they're all lined up down there. And then we get to the end, he's like, that one's mine.
Yep.
And he says, I have 30% heart function. That one's mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different perspective, so that your perspective is not on you. It's on the project that's outside of you. And so they were able to do some amazing things. Pretty much invent agriculture in the West. Yeah,
so Benedict sets out this rule. Not very long. You might read it. You might go pick it up. It's it's out of copyright, unsurprisingly. And I've got this little book here. I don't know. It's 4 inches by 7 inches. It's 96 pages in that. And so it's not, the pages are small. So it's not a lot. You could read this thing. I read it, I don't know, 48 minutes. I don't know. Not very long. He just sets forth how he thinks that these men should live together in this community for their purpose. And he starts off by talking about these kinds of monk, which I think is kind of cool. He says first are the Cenobites. Is that right, Karl? Cenobite?
In English, we'd say Cenobite.
Cenobites. That is to say, those who belong to a monastery where they serve under a rule and an abbot. Second, they're anchorites or hermits. Third, there are Cerobites. Fourth, and finally, there are monks called gyrovagues. I don't know. Gyrovagues?
It's like flittering around like helicopters.
Yeah.
Or maple seeds.
The kind of monk that stays at the monastery and wears the brown robe and that you think about when you hear some chant. That's probably number one, the Cenobite. Now, number two, the anchorite or the hermit, that's maybe your pillar father, your pillar saint, or St. Julian of Norwich.
There still are such as these. There are in the West. I think they're probably more common in the East to have hermits, but they're still around.
Yeah, I know a solitary nun, and they're heavy duty. Benedict says, they have built up their strength and go from the battle line in the ranks of the brothers to the single combat of the desert. Self-reliant now, without the support of another, they are ready with God's help to grapple single-handed with the vices of body and mind. Rough and tough. The third are the Cerebites, the most detestable kind of monks, he says, who with no experience to guide them, no rule to try them, as gold is tried in a furnace, have a character as soft as lead. I wrote Friar Tuck.
Yeah, or who's the guy from Romeo and Juliet that is Friar Lawrence? He sets those kids up and gives them the drugs, and that jerk.
Jerk. Yeah.
He's the villain of the piece.
And then there are these ones that drift around, these gyrovagues, always on the move. They never settle down or slaves their own wills and gross appetites. He says, let us draw by them then, and with the help of the Lord, proceed to draw up a plan for the strong kind, the Cenobites.
Yeah. Now, so why would anybody want to be any of these types? If you're going to be one, you want to be the first or the second. But what's the, as they've been saying on Twitter, the masculine urge to be a monk? What is the point?
Well, here's the problem with this religion stuff, Karl.
Yeah.
If it's true, it has to be the most important thing in the world, in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think it's true, then you have to do everything you can to do it properly and do the most of it and the best of it and all of that.
Right.
You can leave nothing proper undone. So there you go. So, the masculine urge. What'd you say? What is the masculine urge?
The masculine urge to, yeah. It's just a trope on Twitter these days.
Yeah.
The masculine urge to conquer your enemies and drive their women.
Well, he talked about the single combat for the anchorite, the single combat with evil. Like, so there's your masculine urge. Like,
right. I think that's right. I mean, it is hard for moderns to understand because most of us, our experience of religious people is negative. Or I would suggest you probably haven't really experienced it.
So what you're saying? Yeah.
I mean, the Presbyterian bake sale it might not be an example of true religion.
How dare you?
If it's extremely comfortable for you, it's not what these guys are doing. Whatever it is, it's something different than what Benedict was seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think it's true, if you believe that it's true, then it's the most important thing in the world. And these men, Benedict, and then later the Benedictines, have a particularly pure expression of their faith that is, well, just all encompassing. I promise you that every stone that man laid in that wall was laid with a prayer. So they have an integrated worldview that leaves in which there is no aspect of their life that is not devoted to this truth that they believe. That's appealing. Like if you think something's real and you think something's true, then by golly, you should act like it. And I don't care who you are or what you think. If you think it and you believe it and you have your reasons, then it should influence the way you act in all things.
Yeah, whatever it is that you ought to be it without contradiction as much as you can. And that's the monastic urge.
To live without contradiction?
That in the religious sphere is the monastic urge. Yeah, to live without contradiction, to live authentically as you believe to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a line in the prologue which explains, I think, the reason why they want to do this. The labor of obedience will bring you back to him from whom you had drifted through the sloth of disobedience. So for these men who are joining these groups, there are women Benedictines too, but for these men who are joining these groups, I have gone astray from the way I should. That's what they believe. And I did that by my own will. And so in order to get back, I need to discipline my will and subordinate it. And that would be the reason to seek out. If you went and joined one of these monasteries, you pretty much you're submitting your will to the abbot.
Oh boy,
forever.
And how?
Although you can always leave
3 times.
The door is always open out. It's a voluntary association, but it's a voluntary submission of your will. Yeah. And so you have to figure out how to manage this. If you're just one guy off on his own, you don't really need a rule, I guess.
Although I think you do. There's a community aspect to being Benedictine, for sure. Like, they have to live with each other, and he writes about that. But doesn't the proper hermit need to have a structure as well? Whether you're a Penti Lincola ecological hermit or whatever, don't you need a rule as well?
It's probably internal to you, though. You don't need somebody else telling it to you.
That's
I think you're right, but
yeah.
Whereas I would do much better with an external rule. That's why I got married.
Most of us would. Well, for all of you, there's a lot in this book that's about, and I kind of hate this shit, but I'm going to say it anyway. That's sort of about leadership and management, like organizational dynamics. So you could be a bugman wingnut and have your team at work, the dev team, go through this together. There's a lot in here about leadership and about how to do things as a team and community and so on that could be useful in all sorts of realms. If you're putting together your what'd you say, Presbyterian bake sale, you could probably benefit from reading this thing, because chapter 2 is about the qualities of the abbot, who takes his name from Abba, A-B-B-A, meaning father.
The Swedish pop group?
Not that one.
No, that's Abba. The abbot must therefore be aware that the shepherd will bear the blame wherever the father of the household finds that the sheep have yielded no profit. If you are the abbot...
Can you imagine taking that job? Everything at the monastery is the abbot's responsibility. Period. Mm-hmm. Everything.
Yep.
The quality of the shoes the men wear, the output from the crops, the spiritual development and health of the men, everything. Holy smoke. Unbelievable.
Well, it's like being a father of a family.
Yep. A big family of hairy dudes.
Yeah.
But it's not just a family, though, but it also has an economic aspect, because they have to have products so they can fund themselves to some degree. There's husbandry, there's property involved. It's a great big job. I have the acquaintance of an abbot. He's cracked a joke at me a couple of times. Never laughs at them. I know he's a really nice guy, but he scares the shit out of me, man. Father Abbot of Clear Creek? Holy smoke, man. He's scary.
Is he one of those that can see into your soul?
Of course. You can't get that job unless you do. Yes, of course.
Oh, gosh. I don't ever want to meet him then.
Of course.
They're weighty. They have to be in order to do that job. There is, I have heard that in the Sistine Chapel, there is a cry room. Because after the poor guy gets elected pope, they always break down in tears, because they're like, I can't do this.
Right, of course not.
And they're right, they can't, but probably something similar for an abbot. So if we're going to put it in management, translate this into management, which is a way I suppose secular folks can approach this book. If you are going to be a manager, all the responsibility is yours. Everything's your fault. Everything, you have to realize that. And if you can't do that, maybe you ought to work for somebody else.
Yep.
There's all sorts of good little bits of advice here. Let's see. The abbot, he must point out to them all that is good and holy, more by example than by words. proposing the commandments of the Lord to receptive disciples with words, but demonstrating God's instructions to the stubborn and the dull by a living example. So he's got to do it. What he wants them to do, he has to do.
Yeah, he has to be the real thing. Lots of kind of one-liners in here about avoiding favoritism, walking the walk, coaxing by turns, stern as a taskmaster, and devoted and tender, only as a father can be. So he has to be coaxing and then hard and then tender all at once or in succession. And then here's my favorite part of this section. It's the last line of the thing here about being the abbot. While helping others to amend by his warnings, he achieves the amendment of his own faults.
Well, that would be the benefit to the abbot, because why would the abbot want to do the job?
Right.
For the money and the ego boost?
The groupies.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that, though. Like, I think implicit in that would be that if you are a father of, head of a home, you see, I'm patriarchal like that. I can already see the Redditors, the manager at work, whatever. Like, if you're a leader in a respect in a certain place, you will be improved as you improve those around you. I think that's true. You and I have an acquaintance says when one teaches to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So you could flip that. If you let people do shoddy things around you, if you let your charges screw up, you'll be damaged by it.
The organization will reflect whoever's in charge of it, if there's actually somebody in charge of it. And so you see it. I mean, are the bathrooms clean?
Right. Has
the trash been taken out? Is there dust everywhere? It reflects on the person in charge of it. And then I had another thought that, so here's the abbot. The abbot's personally in charge of everything that goes on in the monastery and personally accountable for everything that goes on in the monastery, and therefore has a real interest in making everything perfect. And then I thought, what if the abbot got replaced by a committee? Would it work as well? Or shareholders?
Lysander Spooner would say that they would be irresponsible. It couldn't be, the committee. You can't hold a committee responsible. You can hold individuals responsible, but you can't hold a committee responsible.
Yeah, so you brought up the patriarchy thing. I think it's got to be a patriarchy. Well, if it's women, it could be a matriarchy. But it's got to be hierarchical. Somebody has to be responsible.
Yes. Some people are better at things than other people.
Yeah.
Oh, but whatever. I don't know. I can't even. I can't even, bro. A while ago, I said that I think that if you let the people in your charge do shoddy work, you are then harmed by that. Like if improving, if helping improve them improves you, contributing to their decline would harm you, I think. And you go, I think that's right. Well, my buddy Thad, he and I had breakfast the other day, and he says, I listen to the podcast, and you'll say some weird something or another. And he says, and Karl says, I think that's right. He said, is Karl just trying to get you off of that and just move on to something else, or does he actually think that's right?
No, I actually think that's right.
I said, I don't think he's yanking my chain. I think
I'm not devious enough to manipulate you. People have accused me of that. They're like, have you had a long-term plan to make him into a Platonist? No. No, I mean, I'm glad it's worked, but
I'm not a Platonist. See, here's the thing. I'm a scholastic essentialist. And as such, I know that the form resides in the divine intellect and is not materially substantiated. Plato thinks that the form resides in another realm, and he may or may not believe that has a material substantiation. Big difference.
Small difference.
Do you think so?
I think they're all Platonists. Everybody serious believes in the forms. It's just
serious people
working out the mechanics of it.
Okay.
Yeah, all good-hearted people. All right, so I wanted to go back.
Yes.
Speaking of the abbot, he must so accommodate and adapt himself to each one's character and intelligence that he will not only keep the flock entrusted to his care from dwindling, but will rejoice in the increase of a good flock. And I like that image, and I was thinking about your folks' beekeeping. And the way that you know that you're doing it right is that you have more bees than you had when you started. You have to be adaptable, right, to whatever's going on in which hive, and it's not you laying down the law to the bees, make honey. It's, wait, what does this hive need? And it's the same thing with the people. You have to say, well, this person is very intelligent and will respond to my words and my logical arguments. This guy over here, this monk over here is not very smart at all, but likes encouragement and a pat on the shoulder. That's what he gets. And you have to know what to say to each person. You have to, in a sense, be all of them.
Yeah.
To figure it out.
It's a huge job. But in chapter 3, Benedict tells the abbot that he should summon the brothers for council. And when it's a big time decision, you bring in everyone, every brother, and have a council of war. And you ask them to express their opinions with all humility, and not to presume to defend their own views obstinately, and know that the decision is rather the abbot's to make.
Yeah, don't defend your own views obstinately. Defend them.
Defend them. Yeah, and for smaller decisions, he says you can bring in the kind of senior men. You don't need to bring in everybody. But if it's a big one, you need to bring in everybody, the lowliest choir monk who's on kitchen duty. Probably good.
I like the bit about the younger ones. You even have the younger ones show up. The reason why we've said all should be called for counsel is that the Lord often reveals what is better to the younger.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what you thought of that.
Yeah, sometimes, they think outside the norms, and I think that's probably true. Out of the mouths of babes. At this time, there were small children there. He talks about how to help the children along. So there were 8 and 10-year-olds there, small children.
Mm-hmm.
So they might say something that hadn't occurred to you after all of your wounds and scar tissue as an older person. And also I thought, how clever and wonderful is it to bring them in? So let's say you've been at the monastery. You were the 4th son of a minor duke. And they take you over to the monastery when you're 7. By the time you're 22 years old, how many of these councils will you have seen? I mean, if you've seen 5 of them, where all of these men who have skin in the game and see the stakes to be high do the thing right, you will have seen something really special. The young people would have learned an enormous amount. Seeing things from all these different sides, critical thinking, high-stakes decision-making, all of that. What an instructive process.
That's one of the benefits of the old-time one-room schoolhouse or modern-day homeschooling is that you have a vertical dispersion of age in the house. So, your 5-year-old gets to see the 45-year-old wrestle with problems and isn't stuck in a room with a bunch of other 5-year-olds.
Oh, but they need to spend as much time as possible with their peer group and rubbish. Nope. And also, nope.
Benedict says no.
Nope.
Yeah, Benedict says you need to mix up the peer group. Otherwise, there's no peers. A 5-year-old's not another 5-year-old's peer. Harumph.
Yeah, so I like that. Chapter 3 is about kind of a council of war. And he doesn't democratize the decision. He doesn't make it a committee because, he says it, the decision is rather the abbot's to make, so that when he has determined what is more prudent, all may obey. Nevertheless, just as it is proper for disciples to obey their master, so it is becoming for the master on his part to settle everything with foresight and fairness. He puts the decision right where it should be, which is the top of the hierarchy. So
right,
it's not
so it's an informed monarch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Chapter 4, the tools for good works. There are a lot of chapters. We're not going to be able to do it like this.
Yeah, this is a bunch of scriptural quotes and general advice. It's all good stuff.
I wrote here, the good advices.
Yeah, if you're interested, these people, like Benedict, when he wrote this, he probably just wrote it down or dictated it. But I get to the end of 4, and there's 78 footnotes. And the 78 footnotes are all the scripture that he's referring to. He's got the thing memorized. So these are religious athletes. They're really into this. They got the thing in their head and in their heart.
Because they think it's important, and they act that way. He says, you're not to act in anger or nurse a grudge. Rid your heart of all deceit. Never give a hollow greeting of priests, or turn away when someone needs your love. Bind yourself to no oath, lest it prove false, and speak the truth with heart and tongue. So, just chapter 4, these tools are just all of these aphorisms, each of which has a footnote to pointing at some chunk of scripture. Now, what about this, Karl? This one's the one that gripes me the most.
Okay.
Prefer moderation in speech. I'm not even good at that. So it must be wrong. Speak no foolish chatter. Harumph. Nothing just to provoke laughter. Do not love immoderate or boisterous laughter. And then several other places in here, he's like, no laughter. No laughing. No laughing.
I know. Umberto Eco. Is that how you say it? Umberto
That's
Eco?
how you say it. Yeah.
He had the Name of the Rose book, and what they were digging up was supposedly the lost Aristotelian work on comedy, and the evil monk, I can't remember the whole plot, spoiler, the evil monk has hidden it away lest the monks laugh. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but you have to think about humor. Probably need to analyze it and say, what causes laughter?
Yeah,
whether there's we need to make distinctions.
Father Bethel, who wrote John Sr. in the Restoration of Realism, who is one of the brothers there at Clear Creek, he's cut up and joked with me, and he'll laugh. They all have a very dry sense of humor, and they don't talk a lot. They don't use a lot of words in the course of their weeks and months and years. And when they joke, it's not the kind of joking that you or I do, but it's still funny, and he knows when he's being funny. I thought about this a lot. Laughter is rough because of the things that tend to make us laugh. So many things that make us laugh are transgressive, and that's not good.
Mm-hmm. I remember I busted out laughing. I saw, because I spend too much time on the internet. Probably shouldn't. Well, too much time. Yeah. And I saw this video of this guy, and he's driving his truck, and he got just across the railroad tracks, and then the train hit the truck.
And you laughed at that?
And it spins around the cab 5 or 6 times, and then he gets out, and he's okay, but he's dizzy. And then he falls down.
Right.
And it was funny.
Right.
Well, what is it that's funny? Is his misfortune?
Well,
that wasn't a good day for him, but it was funny.
So, 1, humor is often transgressive. It transgresses norms. 2, there's often a butt of the joke. And that's not generous maybe to your fellow man. And so this guy was the butt of the joke. Unless you laughed because it was a surprising outcome that the wreck made him dizzy. If you laughed because you were like delighted by the surprise that he was okay and it was so trivial that he was just dizzy, then that's probably an okay laughter. But if you're like, boy, that honked his day up, well, that's probably not good.
Yeah, or if I'm saying, wow, look at that moron, thinks he can get across the track.
Right.
That's probably not good.
Yeah. And laughter can make the laugher the center of attention, and it can certainly encourage a class clown. And the community can't be having that. The community can't be having either of those things. So that's what I decided about his prohibition on laughter.
Yeah, there needs to be things that you're just not supposed to make fun of. I think. I bet Brother Bethel probably doesn't make jokes in church.
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not.
Yeah.
He might make a joke when we're out walking the grounds or something like that,
By the way, dear listener, if you go to karlshoot.com, you can see my background is a picture of Clear Creek Monastery.
It's a wonderful place. to just see what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's very interesting. It's worth that.
Let's see. So obedience is the first step. We have lots of stages of humility, I think, here. Obedience is going to be hard. I got to think about my own reaction to that I don't want to do what other people tell me to do. You know, I heard a description once of Americans, at least Americans of a certain sort, that if the government were to provide them proper instructions for lighting a campfire in order not to be burned, they would do the opposite just out of spite. I think that's my attitude, but I think it's because my sense is that the authorities over me are unjust or illegitimate. But if there's somebody that knows what's going on, that generally has care of whatever group I'm part of course you have to obey. As long as you're going to be part of the group, the door's always open outwards.
Is this a show about the Civil War?
No, this is the show about the Rule of Saint Benedict.
Oh, I thought I'd step back in time.
Yeah, the obedience bugs me, but if you are a part of a group that has a common goal and you share the goal...
Like a union?
All right, where are you going with this, Scott?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's proper dogma that you should be obedient to proper authority and disobedient to improper authority. And so the problem becomes the discernment of what's the discernment, you know.
Okay, so you brought up the Civil War. That a monastery is not a nation. A monastery, you have joined. You have gone through a long process. You stood on the door and knocked for about 4 days before they finally opened it and let you in. And then you swept the floors and did all the crap jobs because they're trying to discourage you.
Yeah.
When you want to go become a monk, they don't want you. I mean, they want you, but they don't want you if you don't really want it. So what you end up with is a group of people of substantial unanimity and shared goal. And the goal is what makes the obedience make sense. A geographic collection of people is not quite the same thing.
No. Father Abbott's elected.
Yeah, it was weird when the abbot at the monastery, the school that I used to teach at, he's younger than I am. He's like 45. It's strange.
Yeah,
abbots are supposed to be old.
The obedience thing is tough.
It matters how you do it. So it can't be grudging. Oh, fine. All right, I'll go put rocks on the wall. That doesn't work. That's not... The whole point here is not to build the wall. The whole point is as they see it, the spiritual regeneration of that monk. And so when you say, Brother Wall Builder, go build the wall, he has to say, okay, or just go do it cheerfully. The grudging, I guess I'll do it if you make me, it's no good. It's as if you didn't do it at all.
Uh-oh.
So it matters how you do it. If a disciple obeys grudgingly and grumbles, not only aloud but also in his heart, then, even though he carries out the order, his action will not be accepted with favor by God, who sees that he is grumbling in his heart. He will have no reward for service of this kind. On the contrary, he will incur punishment for grumbling, unless he changes for the better and makes amends. If it's something good to do, and a legitimate authority tells you to do it, just do it. What do you gain by the grumbling?
Right. Like when my kids are supposed to empty the dishwasher. Just might as well be cheerful, because I assure you they're going to empty the dishwasher.
Yeah. Your kids do that too?
Oh, man. They want to take everybody's inventory. She did it. I did it more than she did last month. You know, unbelievable.
Oh, gosh.
It's so dumb. They're old, too.
Dishwasher.
They're old. They're old enough that, like, historically they would have their own dishwasher by now, which would be them. But whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, grudging obedience isn't really obedience, according to Benedict. You have to just do it. I think he's probably right. I think there's freedom in that when you finally say, fine, I'll do it. No, it's okay. I'll do it. It's fine. It's great. And then you do it, whatever this is psychology, whatever that bad task was, it turns out not to be so bad. It turns out that your grudging made it a whole lot worse than it was. I think he's on to something.
Oh, I do too. I think us post-Enlightenment, individualistic American people really don't want to do that. And I think I said this in the Civil War show. I think part of that is that, like, there just aren't enough trustworthy authorities. If my uncle tells me, you need to do this, I realize I probably need to do that. Like, I might not understand or whatever, but those old guys have done some things, and I know they care about me, and they wouldn't do me wrong on purpose. If the disgusting mayor of Tulsa, G.T. Bynum, says do this or that, like, I have no reason to believe that guy can do anything right. Anything. I really don't. He has no credibility with me whatsoever. Or really anybody else. I've said before, he has no political constituency. He's a swamp thing. Like, I don't know where he came from. No one likes him. Like, he's not a proper political authority. What are you supposed to do with that?
All right, but to get better obedience, maybe you need better groups. How's that?
Better groups?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is about monks, and they're based in religion, sure.
Sure.
But not all these groups have to be that. I mean, heck, you make a great books group. Whoever's in charge of it, you probably ought to obey and not be grumbling about it, as long as you're going to be part of the group. If you're supposed to bring cheese and crackers, bring your cheese and crackers.
Yeah, so-and-so's hosting it, and he's like, can you bring the paper plates next time, and we'll be reading X. Don't gripe. Just bring the paper plates and read it.
Well, what I'm thinking, you can use this kind of management model to build up some groups of people around you to do some great things. Find 10 or 20 of your friends, and maybe don't call it a monastery or whatever, but we're the association of, what would it be?
I can't wait. What's our purpose? I got to know our purpose before I can name it.
To attack large homesteading jobs and make them small jobs through large amounts of labor.
Regenerative Agriculture Mutual Aid Society.
Yeah.
R-A-M-A. Ramus. There you go.
Sometimes we do barn raisings. Right, so you have your group of people.
Oh. Karl got the last barn raised. When are we going to raise?
Yeah, that would be poison to such a group. But imagine how useful that group would be. You got your Rolodex, and it's time to have a big job done. I got to dig a ditch. Okay. And, a bunch of people show up, and you have fried chicken, and you dig a ditch. And
sounds all right.
It would only work if there's obedience to the grand scheme of the thing. I think it'd be very good.
Yeah.
Learn some stuff from this book.